Negative fractions are quite straightforward as long as you actually understand negative numbers in general and you understand fractions in general. So let's have a look at what you already know about negative numbers. If we draw out a number line and we have our positive numbers getting bigger and bigger going to the right, we know that as we go to the left, the numbers get smaller and smaller. Now the number might look like a big number, but it's a big negative number, which is actually a small number, isn't it? Now, how can we do the same thing but include fractions in our thinking? Well, just as we know the names of some of these places here on the number line, let's see if we can label them. Now, have a look at the size of the spaces to work out what the tick mark would be called, but make sure you always label the tick mark, don't label the space. Now, there's two spaces here between 0 and 1, so obviously I've divided this space here in halves. So this would be 1 half, 2 halves is 1, 3 halves, you can call this 3 halves, or you might also know to call it 1 1/2. Obviously all of the marks bigger than 1 kind of have two names, don't they? Because you can use a mixed numeral or an improper fraction to describe the same spot. Keeping on going, 4 halves is 2, 5 halves, 6 halves is 3, 7 halves, and we can count by halves. And some of these have other names like 2 1/2 or 3 1/2. Well, it makes sense that as we go in the negative direction, just as these names look exactly the same, except that the ones on the left have a negative sign in front of them, same thing happens down here. We can put in our -1, -2, -3, -4, and then fill in the names of the spaces in between. Now, we're thinking about the size of spaces, but we're labelling tick marks. So, starting from the 0, we've jumped down half. So we are at -1 half. -2 halves, also called -1. -3 halves. -4 halves, also called -2. -5 halves. -6 halves, -7 halves. So we're really just counting the same as you would with whole numbers, but we're counting in halves. And some of the numbers have two names. For example, 3 halves is 1 1/2, so -3 halves will be -1 1/2. And so on. -2 1/2, -3 1/2. All right, can we do the same thing with quarters? Absolutely we can. Let's put in some whole numbers first. So we've got a field of reference, -1, -2, -3. All right, let's just have a look at one mark here. Let me just try and test you, see if you know what you're doing. If I've just put in one isolated mark and I want to name it, the way to work out what it would be called is to make other similar sized tick marks, count how many spaces there are. Now if this is 0 and this is -1, we've divided this space up into 4 equal sized bits, so we must be dealing with quarters. So what's this one called? Well, how many quarters have you jumped down to from the 0? 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters. So you could label them -1 quarter, -2 quarters, that's also called -1/2, isn't it? And -3 quarters. And you can keep going, -4 quarters, -5 quarters, -6 quarters, -7 quarters, -8 quarters, which is -2, and so on. So just as comfortably as you can label quarters going up by just 1 quarter, 2 quarter, 3 quarter, you can label them going down, -1 quarter, -2 quarter, -3 quarter. Same with thirds, fifths, any of the other fractions you know.